If you're into micro brands, purchase watches on Kickstarter, or just follow watches on Instagram and Facebook, you've probably heard of LIV Watches. The Miami-based brand has been garnering lots of attention the past 6 years, and one thing is for sure, they're good at marketing. Which is why all of their Kickstarter campaigns have reached over the $1 million mark, which, if nothing else is said or known about them, is impressive. I've never actually reviewed a LIV watch. Years ago, one of our previous reviewers did so on this channel and website, but that was quite a few years ago, as I said, and without going back and watching the review, I don't remember much of his time with it. So grab a beverage and a snack and let's delve into the world of LIV watches and see if the watches match up to the marketing. You obviously read the title, I am sure, but this is the LIV Watches. By the way, is it LIV or LIV? I don't know. LIV Watches GX Diver in TJ Blue 41 millimeter. These watches do come in a bigger size as well, 44 millimeters to be exact, but there are a few differences. Noticeably, you can get the 44 millimeter with or without the date cyclops. The 41 millimeter does not have one at all. Currently, there are only two colors of the 41 millimeter, this blue and a white full loom dial. Alternatively, there are 8 colors and variations of the 44 millimeter, many available with fitted rubber straps and quite a lot of different looks. So if you want more options and can handle the bigger size, you might want to look at the 44 millimeter instead. Despite the numbers, this is not exactly a small watch. Now that is going to be good for some people, and as a side note, I am glad that LIV went 41 millimeter instead of 40 or 39. So many other brands seem to have been doing these days. I have downsized, if you will, when it comes to the size of the watch I find most comfortable on a regular basis, especially compared to 10 years ago. But with the 7.5-inch wrist, for me, most 40 millimeter and under watches are still a little too small for me. I can wear them for a bit, but I just do not get used to them like I hoped I would. But back to the size of this GX Diver, the specs make it sound pretty slim, but trust me, this is not a small watch, at least not in person. I was surprised to read that the case thickness was 11.6 millimeters when it first arrived, because it sure didn't look like it when I pulled it out of the box, and sure enough, after doing my own measurements, that 11.6 millimeters is only the case and bezel. It doesn't include the case back, which is odd. I've been buying watches for over 25 years now and reviewing them for about 10. I don't believe I've ever seen a brand list the thickness of a watch without including the case back. So if you are wondering what the real number is, I measured 12.9 millimeter, which is basically 13 millimeters thick. So there you go. Allow me to rattle off the rest of the specs and dimensions as well. 41 millimeters wide, measured 10:4, 45 millimeters with the crown included. Your lug-to-lug of 48 millimeters, website states 50 for some reason. 22 millimeter lugs, 193 grams unsized, 300 meters of water resistance, sapphire crystal, polished ceramic bezel insert, and an ETA 2824 movement. And with all of that, you are looking at a price of $790. Oh, and it is marked Swiss made. So as I said, if you saw that 41 millimeter spec and thought, oh, a nice svelte diver, well, you'd be wrong. This is one chunky, little, not so little watch. But what about the rest of it? One of the first things I noticed is that this watch is all satin brushed, not a high polished crown or chamfer to be found anywhere. Well, okay, parts of the coin edge bezel are polished, but they blend in so well and are so small, it really doesn't stand out. I, for one, like that it is all brushed, gives it that so-called tool watch vibe, but with all the brushed finishing, I wonder why they chose a glossy ceramic insert for the bezel. I would have loved a matte ceramic bezel insert. To me, it would have really tied the watch together so much more. The bezel itself has some nice spring to it, good clicks, and I did not have any trouble turning it. Same with that massive crown. Notice that bright orange crown insert, and it matches the one with the logo on the dial. Really matches overall well, and it's very cohesive. Being listed at 300 meters water resistant, it is of course a screw down crown, one that I found on this example to be very solid and pleasant to use. But then we get to the dial, and man, there is a lot of talk about with this dial. Now, if it is not clear in all the reviews I have done over the years, some things I say are subjective, so keep that in mind while I'm pointing out what I consider to be negative. Firstly, for a three-hand diver, this is one busy dial. It gives Breitling a run for their money. It has a dual layer or sandwich dial. It has wave texturing on the outer part of the dial. The 12 and 6 are stenciled, utilizing the sandwich dial, and the rest of the indices are your normal applied ones. The date cutout is white on black with a brushed metal surround. The TJ blue, or as it looks to me, turquoise, is slowly becoming a more and more popular color for divers these days, and I have to say, I do like it, though not sure I would wear it all the time. And then we have the logos and the text. Now, I quite like the orange metal applied LIV logo. It pops, and I love the color orange, and in some light it looks like a bright copper, so all good there. But then we venture down the dial, and holy billboard. I mean, just look at it. As I said, this is all subjective, but I think that big LIV text could have stayed off this dial and made this such a better looking watch overall. And even though you can see them on the screen, I do quite like the hands, especially how the hour and minute hand are all brushed to match that date wheel. LIV also did a very good job smattering the BGW 9 Super Luminova on, and for me, the watch looks better in the dark than it does in the daylight, at least when it comes to the dial. The watch overall feels very well constructed, and the oyster style 3-link bracelet is pretty hefty and balances out the case head, and even though there are 2 pins in each bracelet, you only need to remove one for sizing, not both. The clasp is a pretty standard push button variety, no dive extension, and you get 4 micro adjustment holes. And lastly, flipping around to the back, you see the ETA 2824 movement through the sapphire window, and a pleasing DLC black caseback surround, and you will notice it is not a traditional screw-in caseback, but rather they used 6 screws. Now, this is not the first time screws have been used in a caseback, but I do want to mention to check those screws upon arrival. When I started photography for this piece, I had left the caseback sticker on. At some point during the process, I took the sticker off, of course, and I continued on. A few moments later, I saw a black screw sitting on my table. I never saw it fall out, I never heard it, but it did puzzle me. It's a screw. How could a screw be seated in a hole and then just fall out? Unless it was never seated to begin with, and I just never noticed with the sticker on. In fairness, the screw went back in and tightened down no problem at all. It wasn't stripped. I mentioned this not to dog on LIV because I only get one example, and shit does happen, but also because just like screws in a bracelet, you should be aware of screws on a caseback and make sure they are tight from time to time, or apply a little Loctite so they don't have the chance of backing out. But enough with my little lesson for the day. The GX Diver does have a lot of pros, and beyond my issues with the dial, I think it's a nice piece. But I want to hear from you. Let me know what you think of this piece down in the comment section below. Be sure to like, share, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. And take a moment and head over to our social media and give us a follow if you're already not. It is at Watch Report on all sites. A full written article will be available on watchreport.com, and all links are down in the description. Thank you for watching, and I will see you next time.